In the heart of the Nagaland hills, where rivers meander through green valleys and morning mists shroud the forests in a shroud of mystery, lies the village of Khezakenoma. Elders say that this place, blessed by the spirits of the earth and the skies, has been home to legends as old as the mountains themselves. None are as revered as the story of the Khezakenoma Stone, a rock that, through generations, has offered abundance to those who care for it with pure hearts. Koza, a wise and respected man in the village, had been the stone's guardian for over 4 decades. Under his watch, the Khezakenoma Stone had multiplied the grains of rice and millet, ensuring that no child went to bed hungry and that the community always had enough to celebrate Angami festivities. Koza's family was known for their generosity, as they freely shared the wealth provided by the stone. Every morning before the sun peeked over the mountains, Koza performed a sacred ritual at the stone. He knelt on the damp earth, gently placed his hands on the smooth surface of the Khezakenoma Stone, and murmured prayers he had learned from his father. With each word, he felt the ancestral connection, as if the energy of generations past was flowing through him. Afterward, the stone would emit a golden glow, and the grains in the fields would multiply in a miraculous display of life and abundance. The story of the stone was known to everyone in Khezakenoma. According to the tales, the rock had been a divine gift, placed in the hills by a kind spirit who wished that the Angami would never suffer from hunger. However, the spirit warned that the stone would only flourish under the care of a united and peaceful family. If disputes or jealousy ever arose, its power would wither, and the land would fall into desolation. Koza and his wife Yano had worked diligently to maintain harmony in their home. Their children, Sewa and Chuzo, grew up in an atmosphere of love and discipline, learning to respect the traditions of their people and the importance of unity. But like rivers that sometimes overflow their banks, family peace was a delicate balance, and currents of rivalry began to surface as Koza grew older. Sewa, the eldest son, was a strong and charismatic young man, known for his hunting prowess and his ability to lead. He believed it was his destiny to inherit the role of guardian of the Khezakenoma Stone. Chuzo, on the other hand, was agile and cunning, with a mind that excelled at strategy and innovation. He too longed to prove his worth and was convinced that with his vision, he could use the power of the stone to further improve the lives of the village. The brothers began to argue. At first, it was just minor disagreements about how to organize rituals or how to distribute grains. But the arguments grew more intense, like a flame that, fueled by the wind, becomes a fire that threatens to destroy everything in its path. The rivalry between Sewa and Chuzo not only disturbed the peace in the home, but also began to affect the community. The laughter that once filled Koza's home turned into tense silences, and the warm light of the stone began to fade. Koza, worried about the future of his family and the well-being of his people, knew he had to do something to stop the stone's curse from coming true. The worry weighed on him, like a burden on his shoulders, and he spent sleepless nights remembering the stories his father had told him about the previous guardians. Each had faced their own trials, but none seemed as heartbreaking as watching his own children turn to enemies. One day, as the autumn wind brought the rustle of dry leaves and the promise of change, Koza made a decision. He called his children and Yano to the Khezakenoma Stone. The family, their faces marked by tension and unspoken words, gathered around the stone. Koza, his voice still strong despite the years, spoke of the importance of unity and of the promises made to the spirit of the stone. "True wealth lies not in the rice the stone gives us," he said, "but in the harmony we maintain among ourselves." The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the echo of Koza's words. Sewa and Chuzo exchanged glances, but the flame of rivalry still burned in their hearts. Their father's words were not enough to dispel the pride and envy that had grown between them like brambles in a once thriving garden. In the weeks that followed, the situation worsened. The brothers avoided each other, and when they did see each other, arguments flared up with greater intensity. Work in the fields became a challenge, and the stone, which had once glowed with a golden warmth, seemed to be in a kind of lethargy, as if the spirits had abandoned it. That's when the siblings' mother, Yano, tried to intervene. Yano had been a pillar of strength in the family, known for her wisdom and ability to mediate conflicts. One night, she sat with Sewa and Chuzo under the moonlight and told them a story her own mother had told her when she was a child. She told them about the spirits of the mountains, who saw into the soul of each person and judged not by their outward actions, but by the purity of their intentions. The spirits do not seek out the strongest or the most intelligent, Yano said, his eyes shining with concern, but those who can put the welfare of others before their own. Sewa and Chuzo listened in silence, but neither was willing to budge. The competition for the right to the stone continued to consume them. One dawn, when the air was cold and the first rays of light were turning the hills orange, Koza fell gravely ill. The village doctors did their best, but it seemed that Koza's vitality was fading as the stone lost its power. The news spread quickly, and the community was plunged into sadness. Koza's health was essential not only for his family, but for the entire village, which depended on his wisdom and the magic of the Khezakenoma Stone. The fear of losing their father made Sewa and Chuzo feel, for the first time in a long time, the weight of their actions. But instead of reconciling, the tension between them increased. Sewa was convinced that if he took control of the stone and performed the rituals in his own way, he could restore its power and save Koza. Chuzo, for his part, thought that he should be the one to try, with different methods, to unlock the magic of the stone. In a desperate act, each brother decided to act in secret. Sewa rose one night under the blanket of stars and went to the clearing where Khezakenoma Stone lay. He knelt and with shaking hands recited his father's prayers, but added his own words, asking for strength and mastery. The stone lay cold and inert under his touch, and Sewa felt his faith crumble. Later that night, Chuzo also visited the stone. Using methods he had invented, he combined the prayer with herbs he believed could awaken magic. However, his efforts were equally futile. The stone did not respond, and Chuzo fell to the ground, feeling defeated. It was Yano who discovered his children at dawn, exhausted and dejected beside the stone. With tears in his eyes, he knelt between them and held them. "Don't you understand?" he said, his voice cracking with emotion. "The stone does not respond because we as a family have been broken. If we cannot be united, its power will fade forever." Yano's words fell like seeds into the soil of their hearts, and for the first time, Sewa and Chuzo felt the weight of shared responsibility. They understood that their rivalry was not only destroying their family, but was also affecting the entire village. Guilt and regret were reflected on their faces, but they still did not know how to repair the damage they had caused. Koza, weak but conscious, witnessed this moment of truth. He gathered the entire family together, and with what little strength he had left, asked them to join in one last ritual. In a symbolic act, Koza placed Sewa and Chuzo's hands on top of each other and guided them to the stone. "It's not a matter of who is the strongest or the wisest," he whispered, "but of working together, of recognizing that our strength comes from our unity." The brothers, with tears in their eyes, performed the ritual together. For the first time, they put aside their pride and prayed sincerely. However, the stone did not light up as before. Instead of a miracle, there was only silence, but something deeper had changed. Sewa and Chuzo looked at each other and at last understood. The days that followed were filled with uncertainty. Khezakenoma Stone, the source of abundance and prosperity, lay inert, showing no signs of its former power. Yet something new began to blossom. Koza's family, though facing hardship, became closer than ever. Sewa and Chuzo, having put aside the rivalry that divided them, worked side by side. The fields that had once seemed barren began to receive their constant attention. Day after day, the brothers, together with their mother Yano, plowed the land, sowed seeds, and tended the crops with a dedication born of repentance and renewed love. The village, seeing the efforts of Koza's family, rallied around them. The inhabitants knew that the prosperity that the stone had brought for so many years should not be the exclusive responsibility of one family. Everyone had to do their part. It was a slow and arduous process. Sewa's hands, accustomed to hunting and leadership, became calloused. Chuzo, who had always preferred to use his mind rather than his body, also worked hard, finding new ways to improve farming techniques. Together, they learned to appreciate the value of honest work and solidarity. During this time, Koza, though weak, watched from the door of her home, her heart filled with pride and gratitude. The stone had stopped shining, but her family shone with a light of its own, stronger and longer lasting. Even though prosperity was no longer magical, the community began to flourish in a different way. There were no miracles, but there was hope, and that was enough. One evening, as the last rays of the sun crept over the fields, Yano gathered his children together and proposed a symbolic act. We have lost the magic of the stone, but we have not lost the ability to create our own abundance, he said. Sewa and Chuzo nodded, and together, with renewed respect, they buried the fragments of the Khezakenoma Stone beneath a large mango tree in the center of the village. The elders, who had witnessed the stone's history for generations, blessed the act, acknowledging that this was not a loss, but a new beginning. As the brothers covered the fragments with earth, the entire community gathered around them. Songs of unity and hope were sung, and a sense of rebirth filled the air. Children ran and played, elders told stories around campfires, and everyone felt that although the stone was gone, the lesson it had taught would live on forever. The fields, in time, began to bear fruit again, not with the same magical abundance as before, but enough to feed everyone and allow the village to prosper. The people of Khezakenoma learned to work together, sharing not only the fruit of the land, but also the spirit of community and cooperation that now defined their lives. The legend of the Khezakenoma Stone continued to be passed down through the generations, but with a new moral. It was no longer told just as a story of a magical rock, but as a reminder that true abundance comes from togetherness, shared effort, and the ability to overcome differences in the name of a greater good. As the months passed, Khezakenoma became a different village. The absence of the stone's magic had forced the inhabitants to develop a deeper sense of collective responsibility. Sewa and Chuzo became symbols of reconciliation and cooperation. The family, once known for generosity derived from the stone's power, was now admired for its dedication and its example of overcoming adversity together. The village children began to ask questions about the Khezakenoma Stone. They sat in a circle around the elders and listened intently as they were told the legend, but now with a renewed emphasis on the values of peace and unity. The elders spoke of the time when the stone multiplied grains and how its power faded when discord entered the Koza family. But they also told how the land flourished again, thanks to the determination and shared effort of everyone. One day, when the air carried the sweet scent of wildflowers, Koza, though still weak, asked to be taken to the great mango tree where the fragments of the Khezakenoma Stone lay buried. Sewa and Chuzo helped him sit under the shade of the leaves which rustled in the breeze. In a soft voice, Koza called the entire community together to share his final thoughts. "Friends and family," Koza said, his eyes shining with a mix of wisdom and peace. "The stone was a gift, but it was also a test. It taught us that true wealth is not measured in grains or harvests, but in the strength of our bonds and the way we care for one another. When the stone lost its power, we had to discover our own ability to create abundance, and that is something that not even time can take away." Those present listened in silence, touched by Koza's words. The children, who often dreamed of the stories of the magic stone, understood for the first time the deeper meaning behind the legend. They learned that while magic can be fascinating, it is perseverance, unity, and love that can truly transform lives. After Koza's speech, the community decided to hold an annual festival in honor of Khezakenoma Stone and the lesson it had taught. During the festival, residents planted new trees and shared stories of how unity had strengthened the village. Sewa and Chuzo continued to play important roles in the community, but not as rival leaders, but as brothers who, having learned a profound lesson, worked together for the welfare of all. As the years passed, the mango tree under which the stone fragments were buried grew strong and majestic. Its branches spread out, giving shade and shelter to those who gathered there to remember the legend. The tree became a symbol of resilience and the human ability to overcome difficulties with unity. The story of the Khezakenoma Stone became an everlasting reminder that trials can come in many forms, but it is in how we face them and how we choose to support each other that the true miracle lies. Thus, the legend continued to live on, not only in the words of the elders, but in the everyday acts of kindness, solidarity, and collective effort that kept the people of Khezakenoma thriving. As the seasons passed, the village of Khezakenoma continued to flourish in ways it had never before imagined. Although the magic of the Khezakenoma Stone had faded, the land was now more fertile thanks to the techniques that Sewa and Chuzo, along with other members of the community, had developed. The hills were covered in green once again, and the crops were abundant, the product of the collective effort and joint work of all the inhabitants. The children who had grown up hearing the stories of the stone would often gather under the great mango tree, whose branches now bore sweet, juicy fruit, a symbol of the legacy the stone had left behind. They would often ask Sewa and Chuzo to tell them about the time of magic and how the stone's power faded. The brothers would tell the story with humility, recalling their own rivalry and how it nearly destroyed everything their family had worked to build. "What we learned," Chuzo said, looking into the children's eyes, "is that magic is not always the answer. Sometimes the real strength lies in our hands, in our minds, and most importantly, in our hearts." Sewa nodded, adding that the hardships they faced helped them grow and become the people they were today. The annual festival in honor of Khezakenoma Stone became a tradition that everyone looked forward to. On this day, the village would be filled with music, dance, and shared meals. Families would tell stories of their ancestors, and young people would engage in friendly competitions, proving that rivalry could be healthy when guided by friendship and respect. During one such holiday, Koza, now an even frailer old man, watched from his special seat with a calm smile. Yano, always at his side, held his hand and whispered words of affection. Although the years had robbed him of some of his strength, the old man still had a lucid mind and a heart full of gratitude. He knew that, although his time on Earth was drawing to a close, he had left a legacy that would not be measured in material riches, but in the lessons of love and unity. On the day Koza passed away, the village was filled with deep mourning, but also gratitude for all that he and his family had done. Sewa and Chuzo, though devastated by the loss of their father, felt a duty to carry on his legacy. Under the great mango tree, they performed a simple ritual, remembering Koza and all that he had taught. The villagers came together not only to mourn Koza's passing, but also to celebrate his life and the seeds of wisdom he had planted in all of them. Over time, the mango tree became a sacred place, a constant reminder that true blessings come from peace, unity, and shared effort. Although Khezakenoma Stone no longer multiplied grains, its power lived on, not in the form of supernatural magic, but in the hearts and actions of those who had learned to value the importance of being united. The legend of the Khezakenoma Stone became a pillar of the village's identity. Years passed, and new generations continued to tell the story, adapting it to the times but never forgetting its essence. Sewa and Chuzo lived out the rest of their days as wise and compassionate leaders, always remembering the mistake that nearly destroyed everything and the miracle that unity had brought. In the end, the true legacy of the Khezakenoma Stone was much more than the magic of multiplying grains. It was the transformation of a people who learned to thrive not through the power of a mystical object, but through the power of love, collaboration, and mutual understanding. And so, as the great mango tree continued to grow, the roots of the legend sank deep into the soul of Khezakenoma, ensuring that its story would live on forever. To know more about the fascinating folklore of Nagaland, we invite you to follow us, as our stories are the result of arduous exploration in reliable sources like Naga Journal, Intact Archive, Sahapedia, and Eastern Mirror, which preserve and document the cultural traditions of the tribes of Nagaland.